How are you learning to apply your passions in new ways?
I am at heart a hacker and a tinkerer. I like puzzles. I've always been that way. You know, I was the kid that had more Legos than he knew what to do with, and was always kind of putting them together in different ways. Uh, and I've taken that and I've kind of started applying it to other areas in my life. The hacking that I've probably the most recent successful hack has been the fact that I've lost about 35, 40 pounds over the last year-ish. And I approached it very much in the same way that I approached triaging a software bug. And when you're triaging a software bug, the first thing you do is you get a baseline, right? Where are we at right now? You then get you then do logging and statistics and kind of figure out, basically you gather information as much as you can, right? After you've established your baseline. And then as you're gathering your information, hopefully you figure out what the problem is and you can then resolve it, right? And I kind of basically applied that same approach to my diet, where basically I started doing research and started tracking all sorts of things. And I actually, when I approached it from, again, in a very similar manner to the way I approached bugs. So when I go and change someone else's code, I try to be as minimally invasive as possible, because I don't know whether or not if I change too much code, I don't know whether or not that code will be sustainable. I may introduce other bugs. So with dieting and changing health, like I wanted to change bad habits into good habits, and I wanted it to be sustainable. And I think a lot of people, you hear a lot of people talk about this with diet, where they try and go cold turkey, or they try to do some really extreme diet, and they end up falling off the wagon and they end up going back to poor eating habits. I did things like I tracked how often I biked to work. I didn't track how far, I just tracked yes or no. Did I ride my bike to work? And my goal was I wanted to ride my bike to work half of the time. I also wanted to cut down on my diet soda intake. So I tracked that. And if I had less than 2, cool. If I had more than 2, not cool, right? And then I ended up going and getting really geeky and ended up getting this thing called a DeXa Scan that tells you all this terrifying information about your body that you don't want to know, like how much your intestines weigh and how much how much muscle mass you don't have when you thought you were all ripped. And having that very objective analytical view into my body and how it worked really helped me approach turning the knobs in a much more nuanced way. So rather than going and saying, I'm going to train for an Ironman and that's how I'm going to lose 40 pounds, I was like, I'm going to go and bike to work half the time. I'm going to drink a little less soda. I'm going to cut down my sugar a bit and introduce a very, very small amount of exercise. And it worked out very well. I've been able to sustain that over time. And what was really interesting also was when you overextend your body, and you're basically shocking the system, right? And when you shock the system, think about when there's a 5-alarm fire, right? People miss the little things that are happening around them when there's a 5-alarm fire. And I feel it's the same way with your body. When I introduced small changes, I was able to be a little bit more perceptive about what my body was telling me. Whereas if I had went really extreme and was on a fasting diet or total vegetarian, my body would have been right? And I wouldn't have been my body overwhelmingly would have been saying, what are you doing? Whereas if you introduce it a little bit more incrementally, it was you can basically say, it's almost like committing transactions to a database. So transactions to a database, you can commit, you can do something, and then if it didn't work, you can roll it back, no harm, no foul, right? And so if you do that incrementally, that's what I was basically doing. I was I'm going to step into here. Okay, that worked, cool. And then I'm going to step in here. That didn't work, roll back, right? And it was a very iterative kind of process. And it's allowed me to really be a lot more perceptive to what my body's telling me. So now what's kind of nice about this is I've been on the road a lot for the last 6 months, and I've been cycling, basically eating utter crap while I'm on the road. It's really hard to eat really healthy when you're on the road, to cycling in the good habits. My body tells me basically dude, quit eating sugar. You gotta up your protein, and I'm a lot better at listening at that now.